Hi everyone, Sebastian and I will be presenting the psychoanalytic perspective of George and Lenny in Of Mice and Men. George does his best to protect Lenny throughout the majority of the story. Most other characters question this relationship, especially what George gets out of it. In a conversation with Slim regarding this question, George says, "Him and me was both born in Auburn. I knowed his Aunt Clara. When his Aunt Clara died, Lenny just come along with me out working. Got kind of used to each other after a little while." In that same conversation, George also mentions, "One day a bunch of guys was standing around up on the Sacramento River. I turns to Lenny and says, 'Jump in.' He damn near drowned before we could get him." Additionally, in George and Lenny's fairy tale story for the future, when they discuss the lonely nature of other men, they say, "But not us. And why? Because I got you to look after me and you got me to look after you." George is loyal and protective of Lenny for several reasons. For one, George may feel a duty to Aunt Clara to watch out for Lenny. He mentions that he knew her and that Lenny stayed with him ever since Aunt Clara's death. Therefore, it is reasonable to assume that George felt he had to resume Aunt Clara's duties in her honor. George is also bonded to Lenny through guilt. George stated that Lenny nearly drowned and died as a result of a practical joke orchestrated by George. Since George uses the story as a defense for his relationship with Lenny, he must feel that he has to repay Lenny for his behavior. Also, as shown through this example, Lenny has a blind trust of others, which may encourage George to protect Lenny from people who may take advantage of that quality. The most important factor behind George and Lenny's relationship is companionship. As evident in their hopeful story, George and Lenny take pride in the fact that they have each other. Regardless of Lenny's intellect, he is a constant comfort and companion for George. Since George has Lenny, he is able to distinguish himself from the other ranch workers and believe that his future won't become the same as theirs. Overall, George protects and befriends Lenny because of a sense of duty to Aunt Clara, guilt from almost killing Lenny, and most importantly, companionship.
On the other hand, Lenny is very dependent on George and complies with everything he says. One explanation is that Aunt Clara's death permanently scarred Lenny. Aunt Clara took him in when he was a baby and raised him. When Aunt Clara died, it was as if his own mother died. After her death, Lenny got turned to George. With George, Lenny finds someone he can depend on and trust in place of Aunt Clara. Lenny is incapable of thinking for himself because he never had to. He always had someone to depend on and was never sent into the real world to fend for himself. This dependence causes him to look for George's help, even when he is being beat up by Curly. Any logical person would defend himself in this situation, but Lenny stands there waiting for George's orders. There is evidence, however, that shows Lenny could go through some personal development and learn to think for himself. Although Lenny never successfully hidden anything from George, he still tries to. On page 43, Lenny tries to keep a pup with him in bed. George quickly stops Lenny, saying that he'll kill it if he does. After this comment, Lenny sees George's reasoning and goes to put the pup back. This scene shows that Lenny is capable of thinking for himself and seeing the logic in things. He brought the puppy back to the room all by himself with his own logical thinking. However, when he sees that bringing the puppy back would eventually harm the puppy, he listens to George and he puts the puppy back. Overall, Lenny acts faithful and dependent on George and appears to be incapable of thinking for himself because he has never needed to think for himself. However, there are occasions where Lenny seems to be able to think for himself but still fails to do so in the end.
These psychoanalytic insights also relate to theme. The main motive behind George and Lenny's relationship, a need for companionship, emphasizes the general theme regarding "Am I my brother's keeper?" George and Lenny value companionship, as shown through the psychoanalytic perspectives of both characters. This value is also most evident in their hopeful story when they exclaim a variation of, "We have each other and that makes us better than lonely men," insinuating that companionship benefits the pair on a basis of self-esteem and preservation. Going along with George and Lenny's motives is their idea of the American dream. They continually look to their improbable future of owning their own ranch to provide themselves with a purpose to work and live.